So, hello everybody, this is Bhante Joe here, and I'm just here at Endagala in the forest, and thought to record a short Awada or short Dhamma discussion for the internet. So I thought that could start with a little meditation, so we can lean forward a little bit and arch the spine, and look about 3 feet in front, and close our eyes. And can focus in on the breath. Can know when it's coming in, and know when it's going out. If one breathes in a long breath, can just know, I'm breathing in a long breath. And if one breathes in a short breath, can just know, I'm breathing in a short breath. And can focus in on the breath at the tip of the nose. And if notice any patterns of tension or tightness around the nose, around the face, can just let those relax. And can watch the breath at the tip of the nose. Trying to be aware all the way through the in-breath as the in-breath turns to the out-breath. All the way through the out-breath. And as the out-breath turns back to the in-breath again. Trying to make awareness as continuous as possible. And if the mind wanders off, can just bring it back again to the present moment, to the breath. And before we finish meditating, can spread thoughts of goodwill, wishing may all beings all around everywhere be happy and at ease. May they put in place the causes necessary to be happy and at ease. And we can make the mind infinite, can make it unbounded, all the way to the ends of the universe and beyond, in every dimension. May all beings all around everywhere be happy and at ease. And can open our eyes and do a short Dhamma discussion for the internet. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Saṅghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Saṅghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Saṅghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. So I hope that everybody's having a great day wherever it might be. And so over the last few days, have been getting into a lot of Dhamma discussions with the monks and novices, lay people here at the monastery. They have a kind of Dhamma discussion tradition in Sri Lanka where people discuss the Dhamma. It's in the suttas, kind of have like a back and forth conversation about the Dhamma, kind of a little bit unplanned. So I'm being from the Thai tradition. I was a little unfamiliar with this kind of style of engaging in discussion. And kind of course, people talk about the Dhamma, but it's almost like this is almost like a feature or a particular means, a traditional means by which the Dhamma is expounded here in Sri Lanka through discussion, through kind of discussion with 1, 2, 3. However many people there might be. And so in the course of one of these discussions, we got to talking about the Buddha's teachings on the Jhanas. And one of the monks, we were discussing about the Jhanas, and one of the monks asked about the kind of commentarial interpretation of the Jhanas. And the discussion revolved around the commentarial interpretation of the Jhanas versus the interpretation of the Jhanas in the suttas. So more or less in the suttas, there's basically two ways that these jhanas are described. So for people who might not have heard of the jhanas before, or might just be listening to this for the first time, they're these states of kind of bliss that one achieves through meditation, basically through cutting off one's thoughts, kind of learning to focus exclusively on one object and not letting the mind waver out to other objects. So the commentaries tend to say that it's a jhana only if one sees a light when practicing breath meditation and then becomes absorbed into it. In the suttas, they clearly describe jhanas as though they're a process where one still has some awareness. And kind of in the commentarial definition, it's almost like maybe not that one has no awareness, but that one has no control. It's almost like one is locked in after achieving a jhana. In the suttas, it describes it almost as if one still has this ability to make choices even within a jhana. One can spread these feelings throughout the body. That's kind of what the Buddha recommends in his classical formula. However, there's another formula in the canon, in the Sutta Nipata, which seems to allude to there being a type of jhana where one is totally locked in. So both of these types of jhanas are seen as kind of good, depending on the tradition. In the West, the adherents of one or other type have gotten into debates. But in the suttas, it does seem that both of them can be found. The most common description, however, is this one where basically one still has enough awareness to spread pleasant feelings throughout the body. So the purpose of the jhanas in monastic practice has many purposes, but one of the purposes, what you might call the near purpose, is that this is actually, for a monk who possesses the jhanas, this is actually what allows one to live alone without going crazy. If one goes to live alone without having the jhanas, without having enough mindfulness to enter them, be skilled in them, then one can't live alone for extended periods of time. It could be very dangerous. One's mind could easily go off. So this is the kind of proximate thing, one of the nearest things. We were also discussing kind of living in solitude and gradually training oneself to become more and more solitary, more and more skilled in solitude. And so for this to enter these kind of jhanas, the first thing, or the thing that one needs, kind of clear in the suttas, and also taught by many of the ajahns, is that basically one needs to have this faculty of sati. One needs to learn to become aware, fully aware of what one is doing throughout the day, so that stray thoughts aren't kind of creeping in and distracting the mind. And then when one sits down to meditate, it's this kind of force, this power of sati that allows one to enter into the jhanas. So with regards to these two types, in a certain respect, he was asking whether the type where one is absorbed is sort of like this type without any sati whatsoever, any mindfulness whatsoever, like if it's the same as just being lost in a sensual pleasure. But there's a big difference. There's a big difference in the Buddha's teachings on the jhanas, the teachings of the ajahns on the jhanas, and the way that one gets enveloped in a sensual pleasure. If one enters into a jhana, then one generally has kind of very strong awareness. And even these ones where one is absorbed, the awareness is also still very strong. It's kind of, so we were discussing, and there was a simile that came up, which is kind of like somebody who's maybe lifting a weight and then their muscle contracts, but kind of stays contracts. It's not kind of, like somebody's just relaxed all their muscles and got lost or fallen asleep. And it's kind of this very strong sati is still there, but it's kind of locked in this deeper type of jhana. And in the other type of jhana, it's more like one is still putting forth this energy of sati, one still has sati, but it's still like one can move one's arm if one was lifting weights. So in both these cases, this jhana, at least in the lighter case, one of the dangers that we were discussing as well of these jhanas is that it can basically be lost in the same way as sensual pleasures. It has a similar paradox to it that sensual pleasures have, in that if one goes out and wallows in a sensual pleasure, then one forgets about the means by which the sensual pleasure was produced. For example, if one goes on vacation to many different places, then at the time one's going on vacation, one isn't making money. If one gets addicted to going on vacations all the time, soon one will have no money to go. In the same way, it's this power of sati, this power of continued mindfulness that gives rise to the factors for jhana. And so if one has a pleasant feeling arise in one's mind, and then one just goes and wallows in the pleasant feeling, forgets about the practice of sati, then what will happen to one is that, what will tend to happen to one is that the pleasant feeling will gradually fade away, and one is no longer having this production in place. But the jhanas, they have this kind of proximate goal, at least for monks, in that they allow one to have the conditions in the mind to live alone in quiet places, which are most conducive to meditation. But ultimately their purpose is to be a support, to be an aid to wisdom. This is one of their, maybe their most profound purposes, is that they support the investigation which leads to dispassion, supports investigation, what we might call vipassana topics, that lead to relinquishment of sensual desire that lead to the destruction of the taints. And another thing that came up in this discussion was that there's these broad topics that the Buddha gives for vipassana, for kind of contemplation for the sake of dispassion, but almost the whole Sutta Pitaka has kind of contemplations that lead to dispassion. It's kind of much of it has these different angles, different stories aimed at giving rise to dispassion. So when one contemplates those in a way that the mind is ready, the mind has been prepared to relinquish sensuality, especially through the jhanas. If one has the jhanas, then the mind is secluded from sensuality. It's in a much safer place to actually do the work of relinquishing attachment. Then in this case, these kind of contemplations can go home much more easily than they would if one doesn't have jhanas. So it was a bit of a long discussion that we had. It lasted almost 2 hours, but ranged from a number of topics. It was really nice. But this topic on the jhanas and their proper use was one that had kind of several interesting back and forth questions and answers. And so thought to repeat it here, starting with its proximate cause for monks, proximate purpose for monks, in allowing them to live in solitude and conducive environments, in allowing them to withdraw their mind from sensuality, the mechanics of it, that sati is the agent, sati is the kind of the fuel for the jhanas, and that one can't let go of sati to just wallow in pleasant feeling, otherwise it can be lost. And of course the ultimate purpose of the jhanas, which is to be an aid and a support to the practice of wisdom, for the sake of completely relinquishing attachment to the things that cause one to suffer. Okay, so leave that for reflection, and hope that everybody has a great day wherever it might be, and wishing all the blessings of Dhamma practice. Pati Pati Saranai.